Well, this has started well.
Yes.
So for anyone who's just joined us, we were meant to have a little countdown that was meant to start us and kick us off and cue us off to actually get this show on the road. We didn't get that.
Oh,
So
well.
we
My
are
fault.
running with it. So hello, welcome to Wholanta Presents Watchers in the Fourth Dimension and Doctor Who from A to Z, talking about the 60th anniversary specials. I'm Anthony, and with me, I have my co-moderator or my bi-moderator, Alan Seiler.
Hello, everybody. We are doing by moderation.
We are.
Mm.
And we have my co-hosts from Watchers in the Fourth Dimension, Riley.
Hello.
And Julie.
Hi, everyone.
All right, we're going to go ahead and dig into some of the comments that we've already got. A couple of you have already written in, which is amazing. So we have Alan, Kieran Evans coming in. Well, this is going to be interesting. Yes,
you have no idea. This is going to be so interesting.
And Christiny, hello from Southeast Minnesota.
Hello.
Hello from Georgia.
And she also says, Allons-y.
Indeed. All right, we're going to dig straight in. We're going to talk about all three of the specials in order. We're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, maybe even take a good, the bad, and the ugly approach. So the first of them was The Star Beast, which was an adaptation of the 1979 comic book written by Dave Gibbons and Pat Mills. So this one was one that I think a lot of us longtime Doctor Who fans were quite excited about. And, of course, it was the return of Russell T Davies, David Tennant, and Catherine Tate to the show after nearly 15 years.
And don't forget Murray Gold.
And, yes, of course, Murray Gold. So I think the obvious place to start is I think this had a lot of anticipation in the build up to it. Did it live up to expectations? And what did you guys like about it?
First of all, Julie and Riley, are you familiar with the original comic?
No. In fact, I was not even aware that it was a comic until just looking at things after the aired. And then I was like, oh, well, there you are. It's a smart idea, really, when you think about it. Like, I feel like the entire purpose of the Star Beast out of the three was it's kind of a mending or a kind of reunion or calling back Doctor Who fans that may have left over the last couple of years. So I feel like pulling a classic story, I'm assuming it's a classic story from the comic books, or something that's in the lore, in the Who universe already that's established, would be very helpful. So that was probably a wise idea by them. And also the point here isn't to tell the story, really. We're setting the stage, we're setting the table, we're getting everything back and sorted. That's the purpose of this first one.
Yeah. And to that point, it feels like, rightly or wrongly, there was a perception that Doctor Who had kind of lost its way over the last few years. And this was very much hey, here's something that you all loved back in the day. We're going to give it to you again to reel you back in.
Yeah, right.
And I think it was smart to choose Donna of all the people, because in hindsight and everything, Donna was probably my favorite of all of the new Who companions, because one, the chemistry between her and David Tennant, and that's something that they have continued to have and will continue to have. And also just, it's the best friend as opposed to any sort of love interest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something along those lines. But again, like Riley, I knew nothing about the comic. I saw a clip, I believe, it might have been from the Graham Norton show or something, where what is her name? Miriam was on it.
Margulies,
mm-hmm. Yes. And it was one of those where she briefly mentioned it, I think. And that's about as much as I knew. I was like, oh, it was from a comic. I'm not going to look it up because I don't want to get spoiled.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. My concern going into it was knowing the original comic book story, how true an adaptation it was going to be. Because if you think back to Russell's original era, each one of the seasons basically started out with a very lighthearted kind of throwaway episode where the story didn't really matter. It was about establishing characters. In this sense, you had a lot of characters that you had to reestablish, plus some new ones you had to introduce. And I was like, is this just going to be like backdrop for the character work that's going to be done? And to my surprise, it was actually very centered around the comic book story. I thought it was a fairly good adaptation of it, and it really came across as like a big epic action-packed battle episode, which is very unusual for Russell's season starters. You know what I mean? It was a very different direction, and I thought it was very successful in that sense.
I think what's particularly interesting about Russell is he has this ability to still do plot, but also give you those character pieces, and he balances that very, very well, and he always has done. That's been one of his great strengths as a writer. And Alan, to your point, there was an extended battle scene, but this was also 15 minutes longer than any season opener we had back in the day.
That is
so there
true.
was a bit more time for that as well.
To your point, I think that there have been many, many, many times when he has leaned way too much into the character work to the detriment of the story being told. Like, plot takes a back seat to the emotional beats between characters. And while that is important, I think that he never really kind of balanced it, at least the way that I would have liked to have seen it, because I'm more of a story guy, more of an action guy, more of a tell me something fantastical guy. I don't really care about who, you know, Rose is dating or any of that nonsense, or whether she's getting along with her mother. Ugh. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those.
I know.
We are different here, Alan.
That's right.
I was going to say, you know, one of the biggest viewing or largest viewed programs is any kind of soap. So RTD bringing in those kind of soapy elements is what really made Doctor Who as big as it was in the UK in 2008, 2009.
Oh, yes. Without a doubt.
12.5 million people watched The End of Time Part 2. That's insane.
And
yes.
Anthony, you mentioned the how it was done in about, what was it, an hour long?
Yeah.
All right. That's something like I'm going to go ahead and bring this up now while we have it. It's 3 specials, all coming in around an hour. And jokingly, the warning that RTD2 gave yesterday before the air, or 2 days ago before the airing of The Giggle, was that it's jam packed. It's over an hour long, and it's technically an hour and like 1 minute long.
Yes.
So I don't know, maybe I'm thinking back to like these gargantuan old, I don't know, I just feel like the specials old, like the previous Tenant specials and other specials, Christmas specials, 60th, 50th, whatever, seem to be longer. And I felt like it's fine to do it with the first 2, but I felt like The Giggle could have been an hour and a half, easy. I don't know, or maybe make all of them an hour 15 at least or something. I'll take as much as they're willing to give, but I expected a little bit more epic nature of the at least the size of the specials.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's interesting because we got 3 specials for the 60th, right? So for the 50th, we really got the Day of the Doctor, and that was an hour and a half,
right,
give or take. But it was just one. I mean, there was kind of the lead-in episode that was the finale of the previous season, and then there was the coda, which was, of course, the time of the Doctor, wrapping up the Matt Smith era. But those weren't billed as the 50th anniversary specials.
So and that leads into another question. Sorry to cut you off, Anthony, but for the 60th anniversary, I feel like this is more of a rebirth, a renewal, and like a send off to Tennant than it is a celebration of 60 years of the show.
To some extent. I mean, we got a villain that we hadn't seen since 1967.
True. But I mean, what about
whenever it was?
We have a bunch of other Doctors. Now, granted, they are all probably very hard to get now to book for the show.
And the other thing about that is that we just had an anniversary special a year ago, and that was the BBC 100th anniversary, where they did a special with lots of old Doctors and lots of old companions. And you can't, I don't know, I feel like it wouldn't have worked as well doing it again, just literally 1 year apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it felt interesting that they chose to have more of it in the BBC 100th anniversary because yes, let's celebrate the BBC. It's been 100 years, but at the same time, like Doctor Who, like it seemed like they flip-flopped it.
Yeah.
And maybe some of these other types of things should have been earlier and for the BBC special.
Yeah.
Now, I very quickly, I see some of the comments coming in. Some
Yes.
of them we're going to leave till later.
Oh, wow.
I think.
Yeah. Okay.
But we see them. We're going to get to them. I think there are a couple that are particularly relevant. Let's bring it back to the Star Beast.
Sorry, I went on a tangent. I promise not to Goldblum. I promise.
All right, Alan.
Let's see. We've got Kieran who says Star Beast was very RTD for better or for worse.
Yeah, he really put his own stamp on that plot.
Yeah,
for sure.
Which he does. I mean, that's just and we're going to talk more about that when we get to the third special. But
yeah, and then I think Adam Wright's comment is a pretty good one to flash up, Alan. Adam, I read the comic when I bought it 2 years ago and listened to the Big Finish adaptation with Tom Baker.
Yeah, I
haven't heard the Big Finish adaptation, and maybe we'll do that as a bonus episode on Watchers at some point. But I have read the comic, and I always loved it. So it was pretty cool to see some of those elements.
And I think it's important to say that Big Finish has done more with this. They've had a couple of sequels to the Star Beast also. So one is called Cuddlesome, and it's very funny. And one is called The Ratings War, which is very interesting. And it's a Colin Baker one, if I remember rightly. So there's plenty of Star Beast stuff to investigate if anyone is interested in such a thing.
I always loved The Ratings War. There's a song in that is absolutely hilarious.
Is it more catchy than the Scorchies? Which I'm going to talk about later.
Okay.
Oh, I know exactly when you're going to talk about that. Yeah, it's not more catchy, but it's like a completely unhinged song about like killing and maiming, and it's set to like the tune of like what you might imagine as a song on a kids' TV show. It's really funny. Anyway, back to the Star Beast. So Alan kind of highlighted two Big Finish stories where the Meep comes back. Let's talk about the Meep, because I think obviously the Meep, to use the Meep's preferred pronouns, was one of the star attractions of the Star Beast. This little cuddly creature that turned out to be utterly evil and intent on destroying the Earth and using it to fuel its spaceship. At what point, firstly, did you all think the Meep was an effective villain? And secondly, at what point did you realize that the Meep wasn't this poor little cuddly distressed creature and was actually an evil psychopath? Had you been spoiled for that?
There was a lot of people that did not see the twist coming.
Yeah,
I was viewers. I was not spoiled. It was a good twist. I wouldn't say like it completely blew me away, but I was like, oh, okay, that's fun. I will say though, hail to the Meep. And secondly, the Meep is very similar to, I'm sure you've seen the advertisements for like the stuffed animal that's like a happy octopus and you turn it up inside out and it's all of a sudden very angry.
Yes.
I mean, see that's basically the Meep. It's one of those little stuffy things. And I thought it was great. And also the wonderful kind of play on the E.T. scene of the Meep in the shack. It's a great callback to E.T. It's a wonderful little play. I don't know if that was in the comic book or not. If so, that was well done by them. But didn't expect it. It was lovely. And I did appreciate the Meep and a good villain, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the Meep as well. Like Riley, I didn't quite see it coming. Obviously, by the point you get to, the doctor putting together that trial, it's like, okay, yeah, there we go. But they did a really good job of hiding that for the people who are not familiar with the Meep. And yes, I love the Meep. I like the very demure, like just like, oh, I'm so scared, look at me. And then I hate you all. It was really fun. I enjoyed that.
I thought that Miriam's performance was fabulous, and she sold it so well.
I love her.
Yes, she's amazing.
Very good.
It's interesting because I don't think there was any sign of this, or that the two production groups knew what the other was up to. But the Meep came in the same year where Star Trek Lower Decks put in a
Badgie?
cute,
Oopsie.
cuddly creature that turned out to be absolutely the most dangerous creature in the universe, which was the Moopsie.
Yeah.
Oh, the Moopsie. Oh,
The Moopsie. So
Yeah.
that was kind of unexpected.
Wasn't it?
A nice little parallel between the two shows.
Oh, we need a spinoff with the two of them running around the universe, just ravaging everything in their path.
I think the Moopsie would take down the Meep.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. That's what he does.
Okay, so the other big thing about the Star Beast, we kind of touched on it, but it reintroduced us to the Noble Temple family, or Temple Noble, or
right.
whatever you want to say. So we got to see the return of Donna, obviously, the return of Sylvia, as well as we finally actually got to spend a bit of time with Sean, Donna's husband, and of course their daughter Rose. So what did we think? How did we feel about the reintroduction? Do we feel like there had been any progression in those characters in the 15 odd years since we last saw them? Were we happy to see them again?
I absolutely think that there was growth and change in those characters. The way that that Donna related to her daughter, the way that Sylvia, this is so important, the way that Sylvia now relates to Donna in a very different way. I think that being a grandmother has really changed her. And I think that watching her daughter go through motherhood has sort of made her reevaluate her relationship with her daughter. And I think that the way that those characters were dealt with was very, very smart.
Yeah. And Alan, to that point, if you think back 15 years ago to Journey's End, when the Doctor had to wipe Donna's mind, and the Doctor and Sylvia kind of went at it a little bit after that, the Doctor effectively said, you need to be more supportive of your daughter.
Yeah.
And we come back 15 years later, and she has taken that message on board and is being more supportive of Donna. It's really nice that it shows that there was character development during the time that we hadn't seen them.
Yes.
And there's a... Oh, go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to say, it's nice that you saw the character development, but also at the same time, the attitude of Sylvia is still somewhat the same in how she actually outwardly addresses everything. And her dislike of the Doctor was wonderful.
You!
Wow.
Love it.
Was it Partners in Crime? Was that the Adipose episode?
Yes.
I just recently rewatched it as I was in between these specials, and you're right, Sylvia. There's a scene in Partners in Crime where Donna comes back home after like her initial little recon of the facility, of the Adipose facility or offices, and she's sitting at the kitchen table, and there's this delay, kind of an editing trick, a little montage where just she's sitting at the table and her mother is just nitpicking her over and over, and she kind of delays and fades out, doing from one kitchen chore to another while she just sits there and just gets hammered over and over.
Hammered. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because in the original, Donna, sorry, in joke, Donna had lost her job, and Sylvia, that was the subject of Sylvia needling her constantly. This time, Donna had lost her job, and Sylvia's response was to come in and cook, to take care, to provide meals. It was so different.
Yeah.
It was really, really wonderful to see.
Exactly. Let's talk about Rose, because obviously that's the appearance of Rose was the big game changer. 15 years on, they've got a daughter.
RTD loves that name.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to before Doctor Who. RTD did a show called Bob and Rose.
Yes.
That was all about a gay man who fell in love with a woman called Rose. And, you know, I tend to think that RTD likes to imagine himself as some of these characters, and that maybe that was the start of his obsession with the name Rose. But I think from a narrative perspective, once we get to the point where memories are restored and what have you, and that some of that meta-crisis stuff went down from Donna into Rose. Rose obviously had this kind of hidden memory of Rose Tyler, and
Right.
thus when she chose her own name,
Right.
she chose Rose.
Right. I just want to say that. Oh, go ahead, Julie. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, you have a couple of selections, but potentially of any other name. You know, you could do Martha, you could do, you know, some of these others, but I understand why they went with Rose, because that's also going to potentially get the biggest reaction out of the doctor when she's yelling out for her daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was such a funny moment.
Oh,
I
that's so
love
good.
that. I want to say, oh, go ahead, Rod.
No, it's a very simple. Just
Yeah.
it's also, I feel like RTD coming back to the show, first episode Rose. He's got to have a character named Rose in his comeback
Exactly.
to revamp the show once more.
Right.
If he could have called this one Rose 2, or if he could have put that in the title somehow, I'm sure he thought about it.
You know it. The Star Rose Beast. I want to say specifically about Rose, and this is more about the other characters too. I thought that it was dealing with your offspring who has made this enormous life decision. I think is really, obviously it's the catalyst for what has really changed within the dynamic between Donna and Sylvia. And I thought that it was really well done, because Sylvia still doesn't know how to react sometimes. She says, you know, I said that she was, you know, beautiful. Is that wrong to say? And she's unsure. And I think that that was so well done, because everybody deals with that, you know. Everybody has those moments of uncertainty. You know, what do I say? What do I not say? How do I address this person? You know, did I say something that was a mistake? And they've done that a couple of times in these specials. And I think that it was an honest moment, and it wasn't dwelt on. It wasn't focused on. It was just in, you know, like 2 lines of conversation between Sylvia and Donna. And I thought it was great. I loved that.
Yeah, and I think that's very true to life when someone makes a big change like that, and suddenly this person that you've known for most of their life, it's very easy to make mistakes. And I think it was very kind to show mistakes happen, and let's be sympathetic to that. Let's actually, you know, show it's okay as long as you realize, and as long as you're making an effort.
Right. And it's an adjustment for the person going through it, but it's also a big adjustment for the people around that person.
Yeah.
I had a best friend years ago who was named Blake. See, even now I have to stop and remember what the original, his name was Blake, and he wanted to change his name to Chris. It took me forever to not call him Blake. It took me forever to remember. But then after I got to that point, then it was like, just like right now, I forgot what his original name was. I had to think about it, because he is now Chris in my mind. But it takes that little time to make that transition.
And just again, from personal experience, about 10 years ago, I had a friend who came out as trans. And I remember the first time she showed up at an event, and she handed me something, and because this was the first time I'd seen her as her, instinctively I said, "Thank you, sir," and immediately realized what I'd said, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I've known you for years." And she was very graceful, very forgiving, but it's so easy to do when you've known someone that long and they make a big change like that. And again, I think it was really nice to show a little bit of sympathy and grace to Sylvia in this, because I think anyone who has known someone who has made that kind of change has made that kind of mistake at some point, and they're learning with the person that they're associated with.
Let me get some of these comments about the Star Beast real quick before we move on to the next one, because we're running sort of longer than we had planned to, as I knew we would.
Absolutely.
Rob Lloyd says it was, including the Meeps skipping song from the comic book, was a tragic oversight.
Absolutely.
Kieran Evan suspected the Meep early on. Robert Lloyd says, as a big fan of the comic book story, I did think the Meep and the Rarth Warriors were very well realized. I agree. The fact that they basically stuck to the original comic book design for these characters was really impressive.
Yeah.
Either Chris or Tony says that they should have seen it coming. Kieran Evans says a barrister wig, which is a reference back to Stones of Blood in the Tom Baker era. And Kieran Evans also about Moopsy says, drink your bones.
Very quickly, we haven't quite got to the Stones of Blood on the main podcast, but it is one of my favorite stories of the Tom Baker
so
era.
good.
I'm excited for when we get there.
Oh, it's so good.
And I really like Kieran's last comment, Alan.
I was just about to get to that. Yeah. Rose's dead name comes from the Greek for healer. Oh, so Donna named her child after the doctor. Oh my gosh, I did not know that. That's amazing.
That's really cool. I like that.
That is amazing. And I just want to say, a lot of people have really dug into Russell for dead naming Rose. And I, on the other hand, think it was important for Rose's story to get to that moment at the end of the episode, that overcoming moment where she says, I finally feel like I'm me. You kind of need to see the thing, the trauma that these people go through, that they have to face every day. You know, you kind of have to show the difficulty of what this transition means to this person and the adversity that they face.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Alan, because I've been relatively silent on that because I'm not part of the trans community. I don't know, the emotions that go with it, but I have seen on fan Facebook groups among some of our mutual friends a lot of discourse around this from trans people.
Yeah.
Some who absolutely hated the fact that Rose was dead named by those boys.
Sure.
And some who went, no, we need to show that this happens and how hurtful it is. And I think for those of us who are not part of that community, the best thing to do here is just to listen and be empathetic about it.
Yeah.
And, try and understand that this can be hurtful to some people and others recognize that it needs to be shown.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we head towards the end of the Star Beast, there is just one last thing I want to touch on, and that is the resolution to Donna's memories and restoring them.
Okay.
Because I think that's a big transition point into Wild Blue Yonder. And I don't know, I felt like it felt a bit too much like a get out of jail free card. I was okay with it got split between Donna and Rose, and maybe there's enough where the two of them can both handle it. But the whole I let it go thing, that to me felt cheap.
I think because it then builds into the next two stories with Donna pointing out the fact that the doctor is stretching himself too thin. I think it's a reference to the next two plot points. Whether or not I like that whole plot, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. But I think that's what it's in reference to, is for the next two stories.
My partner Colleen was a little bit I don't want to say upset, but she felt very much like it was a man who didn't understand women writing for women. The whole I let it go thing.
Yeah. That is a little bit as well, but I think that it was a little bit shoehorned in to fit the other narrative around the doctor.
Yeah. Jumping off of what Julia was saying there, that's also evident back with 10, like in his specials, Time Lord Victorious, wanting to control everything, not wanting to let go, wanting to believe he could do everything and anything. That kind of ties into it. And before we skip on or move on to Wild Blue Yonder, I have to talk about this one element within the Star Beast, is that there's a scene when Donna is having this monologue at the kitchen table with her mom about having a gap and having felt like she lost something. If that is an RTD writing to the audience that left 6 years ago, I don't know what is.
Right.
And that's exactly what that was. That is
wow.
I mean, that was it. So I was like, okay, so he's, people I've seen online, there's been in this talk about people like RTD, he's needling this group, he's needling that group. I'm like, well, that right there is saying, please come back. But also, I'm not going to give you everything you want. You have to accept some things are going to be a little bit different. So.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about accepting some of that later.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, let's talk about Wild Blue Yonder.
Yes.
Because this was perhaps the strangest of the three.
It was my favorite.
It was fantastic.
Oh, good.
Absolutely
I loved it.
My favorite.
Loved it.
So good.
Yeah.
I love bottle episodes when there is a very small cast.
Yes.
I mean, one of my favorites way back in First Doctor era is when they're trapped on the TARDIS and it's just the main cast and they start going crazy.
Right.
And that was very much what this one was. And again, if you're going to lean into the strengths that were the Doctor and Donna, it is their interactions with each other and doubling it
Right.
with additional versions of themselves. Oh, loved it so good. It was so good.
Yeah. And it showed the strengths of Tennant and Catherine Tate as actors. I think the big thing for me was I obviously got big Midnight vibes from it, and also an element of Event Horizon as well. The movie.
Love Midnight.
Julie was talking about the Hartnell story. It also, to me, it goes back to it's not just that one or Midnight. There's also the first episode of the Space Museum, where it's just the four characters basically trying to figure out this world that they've landed in. It's the first episode of The Ark with Fourth Doctor and Harry and Sarah, where it's just the three of them who are trying to figure out. Those are the things that I really, really enjoy. Plus, I love when Doctor Who gets weird.
I also really want to say that if the reference of my arms are too long are not to the animations that have been done, I'm very sad.
That's hilarious. That didn't even occur to me. But
yeah, we were talking about that in our group text a few days ago, with screenshots from the Fury from the Deep animation in particular.
That's brilliant.
I mean, I agree that Wobbly Yonder is definitely my favorite of the three. It does feel like a Midnight 2.0. I think what I appreciate about it more outside of like Midnight is that it has that scene that the Doctor and Donna have in the cockpit right at the very beginning when they're just looking out into the blackness. I am and granted, I have not seen all of Classic Who, as we know, we're going through it chronologically. But I have seen all of New Who. I don't recall ever getting such a Lovecraftian sense from the show before about we've had that Capaldi episode, Silence, which I really enjoyed, that goes to the edge, but that's I believe the edge of time, is what was being referenced there. But here, the edge of the universe, and that there's nothing there, and then now there's these, I guess we call them not things.
Yeah,
is what they are. It's just a fascinating concept, and it just does feel very Lovecraft. And I don't remember the show ever doing that to that extent, to the level of darkness. Usually, it kind of gets undercut, but that was a very serious conversation, very nihilistic conversation the Doctor was having there.
Yeah.
Given that we absolutely hammered this story, Riley and Julie, you might slap me when you next see me for this, but I think the last time we did an Edge of the Universe Lovecraftian story might have been Planet of Evil.
Yeah.
Which was also set at the edge of the universe, in between our universe and the antimatter.
Right.
Oh boy.
Speaking of which, Alan, Paul Arthur, let's flash his comments up.
Paul says, did you see RTD's comments comparing Wobbly Yonder to Underworld?
The
use of virtual sets. I did not see that.
I saw the comments, and Underworld, Riley and Julie, we haven't got to yet on the show. That's actually at the end of towards the end of season 15. So we're getting close to that.
Okay. It is CSO gone mad.
Yeah.
Boy.
But what's so interesting is we've talked about the Star Beast, Tom Baker comic. We've talked about comparisons to Stones of Blood or callbacks to Stones of Blood, and now we've got references to Planet of Evil and Underworld.
Yeah,
and then the current Doctor Who logo is the reuse.
Yes.
It really feels like RTD is doing a lot of callbacks to the Tom Baker era right now as well, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely is. I loved the first time that you get a real sense of whatever the weirdness is that's going on is when the Doctor and Donna split up and they go to separate rooms, and then another one of them joins the other one in those separate rooms, and they're having these conversations. I loved that moment. And at first I was like, is there a temporal thing going on? Is this both of the actual characters that are in 2 different time frames or something, like 5 minutes apart or something. Man, I love that so much.
Yeah, and I was wondering if maybe the ship was generating holograms to kind of
Yeah.
keep them company as well. That crossed my mind as a
Yeah.
possibility, but there was a lot here to, as a member of the audience, keep you guessing, keep you trying to figure out what's going on, and it didn't spoon feed you,
No,
which
exactly.
I
And
really appreciated.
that was the thing that I loved about it most, is that you could not predict what was going to happen. Everything that happened, you would not have seen coming. And it didn't. I love that you're discovering things as the Doctor discovers it. And there's no way to predict where this thing is going. I thought it was, I love stories like that, where you just are thrown in the middle of it and you're there, sink or swim, to figure it out. Love it.
This story, and I will give it props for this, I don't think this was a bad thing, but it made me very unnerved. It made me quite anxious as I was watching it. I wear a Fitbit and could see my heart rate going up as I was watching it.
Wow.
I actually really enjoyed that. I think the one misgiving I have about Wild Blue Yonder is it doesn't feel like it's a 60th anniversary special. It feels like it's kind of a mid to late season kind of monster of the week story. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think as a 60th anniversary special, there's an expectation that there's a bit more nostalgia. Maybe there's something there that we haven't seen before, or a callback to something that we have seen before. In this instance, and Alan and I would messaging before this went out, there were all sorts of rumors about Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi being in it, about Carol Ann Ford as Susan showing up, about corrupted versions of the Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi TARDISes. And of course, none of that was true. That was all in the imagination of fandom, because I think we all expected there to be something celebratory about this story. And and I would argue to some extent it was, in that it was celebrating that dynamic between Donna and the Doctor.
It was also celebrating, when you look at the pattern of these 3 specials, and when you think about the fact that this is the launch of the Disney Plus era of the show, I think it's super interesting that out of these 3 specials, somebody who's coming into this from Disney Plus might not have any, care about whether it's the 60th anniversary or not. What it's doing is that it's showing you the range of what Doctor Who can be. And I think that, in a sense, is celebrating Doctor Who itself. I think that you get the fun action adventure comic book thriller of the first one, and then you get this weird turn into just bizarrity. That's a word I just made up, but I think it's so great that it sort of embraced that side of the show's history.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Alan, because RTD made comments about specifically the Disney Plus relationship and how these 3 specials were a soft launch on Disney Plus.
Yes.
And the heavy push is going to come with the Ncuti Gatwa era.
Yes.
So to me, this didn't so much feel like it was written for Disney Plus, but that it was written for BBC and for the British audience. And again, it comes back to okay, Doctor Who, I'm giving you what you wanted for 3 episodes. Please come back and watch again, before we then launch it into this brave new era that's going to be a little bit different from everything that's come before.
And they had the opportunity to. This is the only one they could have done it with, because with 3 specials, you have 1. You have to reestablish everyone. 3, you've got to wrap everything up. This is the only one where you could go completely bonkers with. And also, Alan, we can go in and start using bizarrity. Just like we'll replace gravity with Mavity.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, don't get us started on the Mavity nonsense.
I realize a lot of people love Mavity. I realized the internet went mad for all sorts of memes about Mavity.
I made a meme. I made a meme of something that I hadn't seen anybody else do yet. And then Anthony messaged me and he's like, "Oh, I'm just over this whole Mavity thing." And I thought, okay, I won't put mine out then.
Look what you've taken from the world, Anthony. You've deprived the world of another Mavity.
I'm an absolute killjoy. Yes, it's true.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's true.
I would like to point out one other thing, but I know, because we need to move on to the next one. I caught this. I don't know if anyone else noticed this. In Wild Blue Yonder, two things. One, when the not things of Donna and the Doctor were chasing them and becoming like distorted and giant down the hallway.
Mhm.
And then also at the very end, as the not thing Doctor, and they did this a couple times before, and started like just breaking into like full four-legged galloping and running.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that is a reference to the absolute macabre, disturbing images from Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
That show has that very same type of imagery of humanoids that are large, maybe distorted, that are full alien kind of, and also have like a weird, like slight animalness to them. So I had to point that out. I wonder if that was influenced by that.
I'm not a huge anime guy, but I
No.
really enjoyed Attack on Titan. It's a really, really good anime.
It's strong.
It's
Interesting.
It's one of two I have actively enjoyed. The other one being Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. If anyone wants recommendations,
and that leads me to another question as we move on. RTD2, and I'll keep calling him that because I like saying it, has been gone for so long. A lot has happened in the science fiction and fantasy world. You know, that, I mean, Doctor Who has always influenced science fiction fantasy. Doctor Who has been influenced by science fiction and fantasy. It goes back and forth. And so I'm just very interested to see, like, maybe this was one of those things, and like what other things that have happened in the gap that he has been gone that will come back and influence the show. I keep thinking that I wonder if RTD has seen Rick and Morty.
Oh no!
He
Please
has.
I'm
no.
sure.
No.
And if so, like, it doesn't mean he might take anything from it, or he might tongue in cheekily put in a little joke there. But just wondering.
As you see, my reaction to Rick and Morty is please no.
Right.
Please no.
Although the Rick and Morty guys went over to Star Trek and created what is my favorite of the new batch of Star Trek shows. So it can be done. It can work.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's interesting because I think Wild Blue Yonder, just from the conversation we're having, is very clearly the one that we liked the best as a group.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the one we're going to have the most to talk about. And I think we talked at length on the Star Beast. I think we're going to have even more to say on the Giggle.
Yes.
So let's move on.
Can we get a stack of comments about Wild Blue Yonder?
Yeah. Oh, and there is one last thing about Wild Blue Yonder we need to talk about before we move on to the Giggle. But let's start with the comments.
All right. This is going back a little bit, but Robert Lloyd says, RTD saying, please come back to the audience that's left 6 years ago or even 10 years ago was one of my biggest concerns about him coming back. Kieran says, I preferred Wild Blue Yonder to the other two. Paul Arthur says, did you see? Oh, we did that. Sorry, my bad. Kieran also says, reminded me a little of Scherzo, which is a Big Finish Eighth Doctor and Charlie story, which is
brilliant.
Very, very good. Adam Wright says, a strength of Wild Blue Yonder calls back to Capaldi's Oxygen, which, yes, I hadn't thought about that before, but yes.
I love it
when the Sonic's taken out of play. Yeah, we didn't mention the Sonic.
Yeah, let's have less Sonic in general, please. I realize that's never going to happen because toys have to be sold. But
Kieran Evans says, I'd argue that all of the three episodes were light on 60th anniversary energy. Agreed.
Yeah.
Paul Arthur says, I think the nostalgia was supposed to just having Tennant and Tate back. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Robert Lloyd, really got to get around to listening to Scared. So yes, you absolutely do. Kieran says the full mavity of the situation. I knew someone would say that.
Yes.
Paul says, I thought the inclusion of the Meep was influenced by Baby Yoda. RTD loves memeable moment.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see, some plush Meeps available on the market soon.
Yes.
As long as they're reversible. As long as they're reversible.
Exactly. And Kieran says, I want them to do a total JNT on the Sonic. I 100% agree with you, but now that they've introduced a new model, that's not going to happen. And Robert Lloyd says, Rick and Morty was itself conceived partially as a pastiche of Who.
Let's take it full
circle.
circle.
We are caught up.
Yep. All right.
All right. So the last thing we have to talk about is that scene that wrapped up Wild Blue Yonder when we return to Earth.
Oh,
which of
yeah.
course was the very last appearance of Bernard Cribbins as Wilf.
Yeah.
And I definitely welled up during that. I've always loved Wilf as a character. I tend to love characters who remind me a bit of my grandfather at different ages, and Wilf was definitely one of those. The other one was Graham in the Chibnall era. Definitely always reminded me of my grandfather as well. But yeah, I mean, did anyone not well up when Wilf showed up, and knowing it was Bernard Cribbins very, very shortly before he sadly passed?
Yeah.
I agree completely. And he did a great job in his performance considering, where he was with his health. So
yeah, he was perfectly Wilf. Like iconically Wilf.
Yeah.
Yep. There's not much else to say other than I love Wilf. I agree. I wish I could seen him in antler hat one last time.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
I will say though that knowing that we weren't going to have any of Wilf in the third episode, there was question about how. I mean, they're leaving off in a scene standing directly next to him, and I was like, it's going to have to be a body double that's never focused on, that you only see in a far shot or whatever, and that's exactly what they did.
Right.
And so before we move on, just requiescat in parce Bernard Cribbins, to use the Latin. All right, let's talk about the giggle, because of course that scene leads directly into it, and I know we're going to have a lot to talk about here.
Arpeggios.
Arpeggios.
So totally my favorite. When I had to learn all of them, and I had to learn the minor ones, and I had to learn pentatonic. It's fine. It's a whole thing. Being a musician, it was a lot of fun. But I'm going to go on what I liked about this, because of a feeling that we're going to have some rants.
Yeah,
things
I think we
should.
Yeah, do the positive first.
Let's do the positive first. I really enjoyed in the moment items, because, and what I mean by that is there was, first off, we just got done with Talons. I'll go ahead and say that. And so having more creepy puppets, we had to have more creepy puppets, and I didn't need that in my life. But I really enjoyed that aspect of it, especially when Donna is with the puppets in that room.
Yes.
Oh, that was so good and really creepy and terrifying.
It was. And really well done.
So
very convincingly done.
And I liked kind of, featuring that aspect of it. One thing I find interesting about the toy maker is how we went from a celestial toy maker, which obviously had its problems in the first Doctor era, but then we just go and make him German. And okay. So he's pretending to be a German. Okay. So
he jumps around.
He jumps around a bit.
He goes French at one point when he's in the white tie suit dancing around in the scenes of chaos.
I just find it interesting that the one that we focus on, especially at the beginning, it is the German side, because it's like, okay, so now we're just going to hit on all of them, which I think there's good and bad to that. And that's just because it's like, okay, let's make fun of the Germans like fun of the French, but it's not really making fun, but you could make arguments one way or the other. But I really enjoyed the puppetry. I enjoyed, and I'll even touch on it, I enjoyed the interactions between Ncuti and David Tennant.
Yeah.
Whether or not we like the whole bi thing, we'll get to that later, but I really enjoyed their interaction, and them playing off of each other was really, really well done.
I will say, I mean, what we're doing positive, right?
Yes.
I will say that MPH, it was fantastic.
Yes.
Really, really good. The only criticism I would give, and I don't know if that was his choice or the choice of how it was written, I, for one, found the introduction with him with the German accent, it seemed like playful and fun, and that was enjoyable to me, and made him seem like kind of like cutesy and like a cat toying with a mouse. But when he did his other accents, the English and the American accents, his delivery on that, like, it was like bone chilling how he could be so completely just like immoral and just lacking any sort of sense of empathy. It was really a great performance and a great villain. So maybe we might see him again, maybe years from now, but he should be very, very proud. He did an excellent job. That is one for the positive. I like the element of calling back to a very interesting moment of history, the invention of television. That's a fun little hit back there. I do enjoy us playing around with that, and usually I don't like historicals, but that one was fine because we didn't stay there too long. We, it was just had that purpose. But yeah, those are the quick positive things I will say, and there are others, but I don't want to monopolize time.
I really want to talk about the toy maker because Riley, you said it. Neil Patrick Harris was just fantastic. He was clearly having the time of his life.
Yes.
I loved how we got colorized footage.
Oh yeah,
from the Celestial toy maker of both Hartnell and Michael Goff.
Yes,
and NPH's British accent, that very old school received pronunciation, almost the Queen's English. He was putting on the same accent that Michael Goff had. And just having that level of consistency. I didn't know that NPH was that good as a mimic.
Right.
And he's fantastic. And his little American accent, well, that's okay.
Yes. Yes. We're going to talk about that scene in a minute. Oh,
yeah.
That's pretty important. Yeah.
And just the whole concept and his domain, and Julie touched on the creepiness of the puppets and other elements in that scene. It just, I really loved that. And I think it was a really, really clever move from RTD to bring him back. Like, not bringing back previous Doctors, but bringing back a villain from the first Doctor era.
Yeah.
I think that was a really nice way to celebrate the history of the show and to give us a little bit of footage from that story, which, is half missing.
Yeah.
It was a really, really cool move that I don't think anyone, 18 months ago would have expected to ever happen.
Two things. One, about the toy maker. He is a villain that I have always thought should make a comeback in the new series, because that is something that with the kind of special effects that we have now, that is something that you could really do interesting stuff with. And I think they did a lot of interesting stuff with him in this episode. I think that the depiction of his realm is kind of like going back to, and you don't see it as much in Deadly Assassin, but it's kind of like going back to the Matrix, where you step into a world where everything is off kilter and everything is unexpected and everything is strange. And I think that was done so well. And the whole trick with the customer in the first scene becoming a marionette and Donna fighting off the creepy dolls was just amazing. And even that easily shot and conceived stuff where they're just opening a door and going into another hallway was so good. It was so well done. The other thing that I want to talk about is Stooky Bill. For anybody who doesn't know, this is a real thing. This really was a thing that happened in 1925. It really was the first televised image. It was basically a setup in one room and broadcast to a receiver in the next room. And it really did take that many lights to produce. It really did singe the puppet's hair and flaked off. It didn't catch on fire, I don't think, but it did flake off the paint on the character, on the puppet's face. So all of that stuff is absolutely accurate. And you can find footage on YouTube that purports to be a recording of the original broadcast, and you have to watch it because it is the creepiest thing. Oh my God, it is so creepy that I almost slipped an F word in there. That could easily have been the premise for an entire episode. I kind of feel like it was a little bit thrown aside when it could have been the basis of a really creepy episode.
But then I worry we're heading too much into the territory of the Idiot's Lantern.
No, I don't. Well, maybe. Okay.
But one thing I'll say, you mentioned, bringing back such an old character. I would like to put up for maybe the 70th anniversary. Let's get the meddling monk in there, because I'd love to see him.
Yeah,
I'm behind that 100%.
So speaking of returning characters, let's talk about Mel.
Oh God,
because I love Mel.
I can't comment on the entire.
Same here.
Right.
Okay, we'll just sit this one out, Julie.
I know. It's fine.
Well, but you can talk about what you thought of her as seeing her as a one-off character in this one thing without the burden of, you know, past continuity or anything like that. Did you enjoy her?
Oh, yes. I thought it was interesting. Like, I wonder where RTD was going. And this also leads into probably probably will be considered the second most famous scene out of this entire special is the puppet scene, talking about past companions, where the toy maker makes a reference to the Doctor having a thing for redheads.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, well, then what is RTD doing? Like, why then Mel? Like, why did he, like, what was the purpose? Like, is there something more there that I'm not catching? I mean, obviously I see that, or, I mean, it's a weird thing to say, unless just as an offhanded comment, especially when you're bringing back an old companion. It seems like a very peculiar to do.
Yeah, but I think that plays into the school reunion thing where you have an old companion and a new companion and you kind of pit them against each other.
Okay.
And I want to say, I have more to say about that later on. I was so happy to see Mel. First of all, once you two get to her, you'll see that Bonnie is fabulous, but the character was never well handled on the show. And there was like a 2-sentence line of dialogue where she basically, super quick story, catches the Doctor up on where she's been and a little bit about her family situation. That is more character development than we got from her on a year and a half on classic Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. It was really well done, and she delivered it so beautifully. The only bad thing I have to say about this is that there's a scene where the toy maker does a big song and dance number and dances with Kate and with Mel and spins them off and slams them against the wall and knocks them out or whatever. And my first reaction was, excuse me, Bonnie Langford is a Dancing with the Stars champion. She would never fall for that.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Alan, because when Bonnie was on Doctor Who in 1986, 1987, it was one of the big criticisms of the show of this show has fallen so far. You're now getting someone from light entertainment.
Yes.
Someone who's a singer and a dancer in as the companion.
A song and dance gal. Yes.
And I think, again, they didn't do good things with her character back in the day.
No.
And what they did here was flesh her out and actually show Bonnie's range and her ability, which anyone who's listened to her turns in Big Finish or seen her in other things already knows she has the capability to do this. But it's
100%.
almost like shutting up her critics about her time on the show as well.
When she was originally introduced in 86, the only thing that we got told about her was that she's from Pease Pottage and that she's a computer programmer. They never, ever did anything with her programming a computer on the show. Now she is a unit employee. She is doing all the big science computer stuff. And I'm like, good for you. Good for you.
It was so good to see her back. And Bonnie was amazing. She still looks absolutely gorgeous and she's nearly 60. I mean, just fantastic. Yes, please. Looking forward to having more of her in the next season.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Because it's been announced she'll be there.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We've seen we've seen photos of her and Ncuti on a motorbike together. So
yeah, she's gonna stick around.
Yeah.
All right.
And of course, I'm going to give a little bit of props. I mean, RTD is building on Chibnall here because she was, of course, in the support group scene at the end of the Power of the Doctor.
I want there to be I don't want to say necessarily a spin-off, but a short mini-series maybe of the companions, that support group, or even shorts. If they were to come out with like little 5-10 minute shorts that would just appear every once in a while. Disney loves shorts. Let's be honest. That's one of their things. I think that would be fantastic.
I'm ready for my spinoff. I have been asking for this spinoff for 11 years. I am not lying. I have video evidence of asking Sophie about it on stage in 2011. So I'm sorry, that is 12 years that I have been asking for this show. And I am ready for it to happen. As soon as that last scene in Power of the Doctor came on, I was like, there's my spinoff. It's about to happen. It's on the way. So I'm ready.
Can we flash up Austin's comment, please, Alan?
Yeah, we have a lot of comments.
I know we do.
But I want to pick up on Austin since it's related to Mal. Do I hear future Watchers in the Fourth Dimension crush alarms? I'm going to say, for me, you absolutely do. And that's going to happen a lot over the coming years between now and the end of the classic show for me. So I'm going to apologize for that.
I don't know that anyone's going to surpass Jamie. Oh, look, I got his name in there. But
Well, you do have Turlo to come, so we'll see.
we'll see.
It won't. But Turlo's great. And another redhead, I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
He does love his redheads.
So speaking of redheads, let's go and talk about the puppet scene.
Oh, right.
With the toy maker.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah. Oh, my God.
Before we go into like the comments and what people can take from that, the one thing I'm gathering a lot that people have been saying online is poor Rory.
Yeah.
Poor Rory.
Yeah.
Just
well, I mean,
who's Rory?
Yeah, well.
I always am. I won't get into my whole commentary on Rory because I don't like Amy, but that's a whole nother story.
Bam.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
All right. Well, outside of the joking of it, it's excellent. It's pure classic mental anguish and torture that our villain is providing the Doctor, and there's this question online that's been raised whether there's some sort of subtext here that this is some sort of RTD to Moffat message. I'm not picking. I honestly don't think that's the case.
I mean, no, I don't think it is at all.
And particularly since there are rumors that Moffat will be back to write for RTD.
Yeah.
I really don't think so. They're close friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
They hang out. They talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, if they were to come back and because actually my favorite RTD stories were written by Stephen Moffat. So I'm like, yes, please come back because I think their combination is fantastic.
Yeah. Yes.
I also think, Riley, just touching on kind of classic mental torture, it's also the purpose is to attempt to make Donna question the Doctor as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that scene where not that scene, but that moment where she turns to him and says, "Is this all true?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yes, it is.
It is.
It is. And I realized the Chibnall era was not universally popular. In fact, it was quite unpopular for a big segment of fandom. I do actually appreciate Chibnall left the flux kind of unresolved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were all, those of us who watched it, and I know, Riley, you didn't, there were those of us at the end of it going, oh, wait, so is half the universe just destroyed and we're just going to leave that there?
Yeah.
And RTD is explicitly saying, I see this, and yes, we are. Half the universe has been destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was also a reference. Sorry, go ahead.
Half a universe is still a really big place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was referenced in Wild Blue Yonder. That was also brought up there too. So, I mean, he's hit on it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems very clear that's something he's probably going to be going into next season.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And I'll say why when we get toward the end of the episode.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Okay.
I see where you're going.
I also, I think it's so interesting that it's another one of those spaces where RTD, I think, is needling a certain section of fandom who was half expecting him to come in and wipe away the Chibnall era and retcon the whole thing. And he's very explicitly saying, I'm not going to do that. This happened. Deal with it.
Right.
One of the things that we talked about on my show was back to Wild Blue Yonder was that there was this exchange between the Doctor and the fake Donna where she says, you know, he's talking about Gallifrey and that's where I'm from. And she says, no, you aren't. You don't know where you're from. And he has this moment of like, just kind of his barriers break down. And he has this like outpouring of, you know, half the universe is gone and that's not your fault. But I know it isn't. But, you know, he has all this stuff that he's dealing with. And I thought that was better handled than any of the scenes in any of Chibnall's episodes.
I would agree.
There was repercussions to that having happened, and I thought it was really, really well done.
Yeah, we all kind of made an assumption that RTD would be clearing up some of Chibnall's mess, and I don't want to come across as too anti-Chibnall. I think there were things his era didn't do well. There were a few things I liked, but the kind of the hanging chads, for want of a better term, like the Flux and like the Timeless Child.
Ooh, that's a flash from the past. Haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah.
Acknowledging those and kind of saying, yes, this is unresolved, and I'm going to treat this in a way that the Chibnall era didn't. I actually really like that. He is,
Yes.
to some extent, clearing up Chibnall's mess, but by actually giving some level of emotional fallout
Mhm.
and consequences to it, rather than just sweeping it under the table.
Right.
And that scene, the marionette scene, where he's going through some of the Doctor's companions post Donna, and then wraps it up with the planets and says the Flux, and he cuts down. There's a couple of things about that. One, it reminded me very much of now I forgot where I was going to go with this. One of them was back to a Chibnall episode that I can't ever remember the name of, which had the aliens telling a backstory, and it had this animated sequence in it.
Oh, yeah, I know the
which
one you
was
mean.
so beautiful. And then what was the other one? Frack. There was another thing that it reminded me of where it's sort of like an alternate narrative, an alternate storytelling mechanism to get a point across. And I thought it was so really well done. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Not just the callbacks to the previous companions and, you know, getting to see Clara again and Bill again. I freaking love Bill, but it was just neat to, rather than having appearances by the actors, to have this presentation almost. And the way that it needles Donna and the way that it really gets under the Doctor's skin with, you know, there was a, what was the one where Davros was with the Donna and all those people, and he was called, and he called the companions children of time, and he's like, you know, you don't fight wars, you get them to do it for you, and all that kind of accusatory stuff. And this was a sort of the same kind of thing, but I think better done, because it was so beautifully presented.
There's only one thing I think I might have changed about that scene, and I would have loved to have seen marionettes of the 11th, 12th, and 13th Doctors in those.
Okay. That would have been fun.
I think that would have been a fun little callback and acknowledging other appearances, but I can see why it didn't, because Donna doesn't know what these other Doctors look like, and yeah, I can see why it wasn't done, but it would have been really cool if it had been.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the thing.
The
I
thing.
think it's about time.
It's got to be.
All right. It's
because there's fallout. There's fallout after
there's
it.
Fallout.
There's
So much
thing,
fallout.
and then there's the resolution that follows it.
It's about 22 and a half hours after the giggle finished, as we're talking about this. And you can already see on online fandom, whether it's Facebook groups, whether it's Gallifrey Base, Planet Mondas, Instagram, there's a lot of chatter about the bi-generation.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it's controversial. I have my own opinions that I will voice later, but I want to ask what everyone else thinks about it.
So in its immediacy, I really enjoyed it. I think it looked great. Having the toy maker basically call out a double or nothing. I think, you know, you have to have a double or nothing, so you have to have the two Doctors there. So I loved that aspect of it. Watching the game being played between the three of them was really fun. However, at the end of that, I thought that the 14th Doctor, David Tennant's Doctor, should have slowly vanished or something along those lines and kind of ended, because yes, now it leaves it open of like there's this fork in the road now, and what does that mean?
Yeah.
I will say that as going into, ever since Tennant got announced as coming back, and knowing that Ncuti was cast as the following Doctor, I kept thinking as, and just to be clear, I may cosplay the 10th Doctor, but technically my favorite Doctor is the 12th Doctor. But I have a strong attachment to 10. So I kept thinking like RTD made basically the most melodramatic, over the top death
Yes.
And just that carried on for literally, it was like the end of the Lord of the Rings. It was like 25 minutes long.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no way that he can do that again. He just can't. It devalues what happened before.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
And I kept thinking like he's going to do something like that's got to like something else. He just can't do it like that. And so I was like, I feel like he's put himself in a corner. And so he can't do that to people. And also he runs the risk. And I know like some people don't like him having to like hedge his bets like this. He also runs the risk of, clearly Tennant has come back to revive interest back on the show for people that have left.
Yeah.
And then to bring him back and then just to pull him right back away again runs the risk of losing those people you may have pulled back. I know that's very cynical.
Yeah.
I know. But in case of emergency, bring out Tennant.
Right.
So I feel like that's what he had to. He was stuck in a situation like that. So So in those parameters that he had to go through, I felt like that's a fair thing to do. And how I perceived it was that this is kind of like Time Lord retirement. He will eventually, after years of just kind of winding down and just enjoying a family life, eventually kind of like Yoda, just disappear. And then all of a sudden, and then Ncuti is, doing this thing. Because Ncuti seems to be aware of everything because he is the later incarnation. He knows, already knows what's happened. So he's kind of giving everyone the rules of the road. But before I hand it off, I can't help but think, though, the shot of the split itself, with both of them looking at each other, there is a exploitation movie that came out in the 70s called The Thing with Two Heads.
Yes.
Where Ray Milland, it's basically two people have been merged, where it's a very conservative white man and a black man have been merged together.
Yes.
And it's hilarious.
Yes.
And I can't help but think of that when I saw that shot. So
and I thought of that, and I was
okay,
absolutely, and I was also thinking of when you go further back in film to like Todd Browning and Freaks.
Oh yeah,
I used to be really into all those like circus sideshow things, and when you get to conjoined twins where you're sharing half a body, and there's that shot from above where you can see that there's two distinct bodies from the waist up and only one from, and I was like, so had they just continued on with a conjoined twin doctor, that would have been amazing.
Just was one episode, just one
episode. Come on, man.
Probably a bit too expensive to actually do, but it would have been hilarious.
Oh my God.
So I'm kind of with Julie. I liked the idea of kind of having it on a short term. I kind of, it's a tradition to have an anniversary special, have multiple doctors. So we did get the resolution as a multiple doctor story.
Yes.
But I do kind of wish that they'd found a way to resolve it and not have David Fortinant running around the Doctor Who universe forever.
Right.
And what I kind of had hoped was that, Ncuti's Doctor had somehow been pulled backwards in time to a point where he shouldn't have been, and would then have to effectively go on retirement so that he could allow himself to kind of catch up with Ncuti and regenerate while Ncuti's still running around the universe at the same time as he's having his little rest and retirement. That's kind of how I hoped it would go. I do think it's problematic for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it gives all the bigots who don't want to accept a black man as the Doctor the ability to say, well, he's not the real Doctor. He's just a splinter, and the real Doctor is just sitting around with the nobles in retirement. I hate that idea because I feel like it does give people the ability to invalidate Ncuti, who I think is going to be a great Doctor.
Agreed.
The other reason I hate it, and we've kind of alluded to this, is anytime the ratings take a dip, it gives them the ability to wheel out David Tennant and to just say, hey, look, your favorite Doctor's back. Please watch again, which we've already talked as being one of the reasons that these specials happened. So I really dislike that for two reasons. I really feel like it's a little bit disrespectful to Ncuti and the coming era. And I don't think that's deliberate, because I don't think Ncuti would have signed up for that. I don't think RTD would want to disrespect Ncuti, but I almost feel like it's been a little poorly thought out.
I think that RTD is like a bull in a china shop. I think he's just big and clumsy, and he does things like this without realizing the potential damage of it. And he doesn't intend to disrespect Ncuti, but there's an element of it.
I think I saw, a reference to a Doctor-verse, right? And they're talking about having all of these splits. And for better or for worse, there might be some stories with David Tennant. I don't want there to be, but I'm just saying that is a possibility. And what I think they've learned, Disney has, with all the Marvel offshoots, is that if it's not a well-known character, people will always tear it down because it's not as well of a character. Ironically, the Avengers were B characters, and yet it did really well. But now they're saying, oh, well, we can't have these other B characters because they're not good enough. But I think they're kind of looking at that perspective. And if they can't have enough different doctors potentially show up in these things, then that might not do well for the universe.
Alan, can you flash up Austin's comment, please?
The bottom one?
Yeah. So this is something I was saying earlier when Alan and I were talking before everyone else joined, before we went live. So Austin says it feels a little like RTD is trying to one-up Chibnall for being controversial. And I'm gonna curse here, so pardon my French.
Oh.
If Chibnall had done this bi-generation thing, he would have been fucking crucified.
Yeah.
Like absolutely crucified. And I feel like RTD gets a bit more grace because his original era is so fondly remembered by so many people. But yeah, this is controversial. I don't like it. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but a while back there was an alleged leak of a promo poster for a show called Partners in Time that was allegedly going to be starring David Tennant and Catherine Tate.
I forgot about that.
And I'm a little worried now that might be real.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with the idea of spin-offs featuring companions, featuring unit, featuring monsters. But the idea of having a parallel Doctor Who show running at the same time as the main show, again, I'm worried that's going to take away from the current incarnation.
And that goes, real quick, that goes right back to RTD's original era when everybody said it'd be really cool if in between seasons you could do an 8th Doctor mini series or whatever. And he says, we're never going to do that because that confuses the audience about who the incumbent Doctor is. And you don't want to ever do anything to undermine your main show.
Yeah. And I do worry they've looked at what's happened with Marvel.
Yeah.
And I think where we are with Marvel right now, I used to love Marvel. I'm not a fan anymore. I can't keep up with the amount of content.
Yes, but Loki was amazing. So just
but in talking to a lot of people, there is severe burnout on the amount of Marvel content. And even I can never pronounce his name properly. Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige. He's even come forth and said, yeah, we've kind of done too much and we need to start scaling it back.
Well, see,
and I am worried about Doctor Who potentially going in that direction.
Yeah, that's a worry, but let's be clear here. We're only looking at this from the point of view of, one, we don't know for certain, and also think of how successful the MCU was at the beginning.
Yeah.
If they have this, and of course it's very difficult for corporations to have this, even if it's successful, if they have the self-control I know that's hilarious, to retain and so they don't overwhelm the viewers and give them too much, then it could work. I really do think it could. And also we're in a situation where I mean I don't want to talk about ratings or anything like that, but I mean everyone has seen the new Who ratings and what happened.
Yeah.
They're never ever going to take that risk again because this thing is going to be put on ice. It's going to need to be put on ice if it does ever get canceled for at least 5 or 10 years before it gets redone again. And so that's why they're keeping their tenant dry. That is why they're providing. I'm going to keep coming up with metaphors for that.
I do think if you're looking at another franchise as a blueprint, it's not Marvel that we should be looking at. It's Star Trek.
Yes.
Right. Which has multiple shows ongoing, but in more recent times, there's only ever been one going out at once. I think at the beginning, Alan, you probably know this show. Right. Alan probably knows this better than me because you do a Star Trek podcast, but I think at the beginning there was a little crossover between maybe when Picard and Discovery were airing in kind of 2020 I think a few of those kind of went out on the same day.
Yes,
But
there was only a few weeks though. It was only there was,
but
and that was the only time that it happened.
But in recent years, it's pivoted more towards just one show at a time.
Yeah.
And then you get a few weeks break, and then the next show starts up. And they've done a good job of not oversaturating it. The commitment is 45 minutes a week, and it works quite well.
Right. And the other thing about coming into a period where we might get too much Doctor Who content, let's keep in mind that we have just come out of a period where we were getting one short season every couple of years.
Right.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we have been in like a near drought situation for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with more content. I just think it needs to be very carefully done and very carefully managed.
Totally agree.
So, I mean, I guess we've talked about the controversial thing.
Yes.
Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the fact that Ncuti is here, and I am very, 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 very jealous of 15th Doctor cosplayers because they don't have to worry about the heat at DragonCon. They can run around with no pants on.
No, this is not a good thing. There are going to be people who should not be running around in their whitey tighties.
But let's be honest. You've been to DragonCon. There's a lot of excess skin there for other fandoms that you don't want to see. That's out there anyway. So
I don't need it. No, thank you.
I just have a question. One, because they split. Okay, so now the Tennant's Doctor is commando with no shoes on,
right?
But yet the shirt copied. I felt like Ncuti should have been in an undershirt.
It was an undershirt. If you look very carefully, it wasn't a collared shirt. It was a long sleeve undershirt.
Yeah.
Yes. And the thing I'm excited to see is the new pair cosplays.
Yes, you can definitely do paired cosplay.
Yes, I'm excited.
That'd be fun.
That would be amazing. That'd be really
honestly, if we're talking about cosplays, I can't wait for someone to cosplay as a golden tooth, right? That version of the Master, just wandering around as a giant gold tooth. It's gonna be amazing. Sorry, who are you? Oh, I'm the Master.
All right, I have to come back to that point whenever we finish with this part.
All right, so I mean, Ncuti, let's talk about about his.
He was wonderful. I really like him off the bat. I like that we probably get more of the new Doctor in the regeneration episode than we've ever had before, with the possible exception of the time in the Rani, because Alan knows how that goes. The Sixth Doctor regenerates literally in the opening moments of that story.
Right.
But maybe the TV movie. Sylvester got a little bit of time before Paul McGann came in. But a regular type of regeneration where the Doctor traditionally regenerates at the end of the story, we got more Ncuti than we've ever had of another Doctor.
Yeah, and I think that with the timing of all this stuff, with the timing of this being in production and the timing of when Ncuti was cast and announced, you could have done more of this. I loved seeing the Doctor getting shot down. I guess it was like 2/3 of the way through the episode where it's not at the end and where it comes at an unexpected moment. Whether you like or not what came after that, I thought it was great that you got to see a regeneration. I would love to see a regeneration happen in the middle of an episode where you don't have to have some big teary emotional molasses kind of like goodbye scene, and he just gets shot down and then the next guy stands up and carries on. I mean, I think that would be, people in the modern era are not gonna like that, but
I think what could have been really fun, and if this was Moffat, in the 50th, Moffat gave us the glimpse of Peter Capaldi's eyes. If this was a Moffat script, Ncuti would have shown up about halfway through in his TARDIS. You would have had the two of them hanging out together, solving it together, and then at the end, he would have basically said, "Hey," and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, "I'm kind of around on the scene now. You look very tired, David Tennant. You need to go into retirement and enjoy a family life and recover and fatten yourself up a bit because you're running on fumes.
Yeah.
Go, lay low. I'll see you in a year when you become me," or whatever it is. And I think we could have had probably more David Tennant and Ncuti together, solving the plot to this.
Yeah.
And but anyway.
So what you're saying is that in that scenario, the 14th Doctor would have gone off. He would have gone into retirement, gone off to live with the Tates, and basically regenerated from dying of boredom.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
But I just want to say, Ncuti's performance is phenomenal, and he is immediately the Doctor, and I like how he's just like, yeah, I'm complete and everything, because just to kind of address the elephant of the bi-generation, I think, and just to, I think there was that purpose of splitting the Doctor of David Tennant still being the run ragged and Ncuti being like this revitalized new fresh Doctor, which is going into that Disney Plus era,
the new fresher
one.
Well, what I think they're doing is that they're giving Ncuti the ability to be the freewheeling, carefree, go forward and have fun Doctor, because he has had the opportunity to basically shunt all of that trauma from the flux, from all that stuff that they mentioned in the episode onto Tennant. Tennant carries it forward and does the healing, while the other guy gets to saunter off scot-free and have a fun time. And I think that it's kind of a smart way to deal with that, to give your new Doctor a fresh start. But at the same time, I kind of feel like it's a little insulting to people who actually do go through trauma and don't have the ability to shunt that off to a clone and say, you go deal with this so I can just be happy.
Yeah. And to the point of the script, when did the Doctor last have a holiday? And Alan probably might have this a little better than Riley and Julie, but I think the last time was when he went fishing in the Androids of Tara. So
yeah, well, there was a little bit of fishing in the Two Doctors.
Oh yeah.
And they certainly tried to do vacations. Mel definitely wanted to get in that pool.
Oh yeah, but it's been a while since there was the Doctor properly had a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is this our first New Who Doctor that's really will have like no like weight of like past trauma laying upon him?
I hope so.
I mean Jodie was a kind of clear, but then she has the flux. So then like I'm just trying to think, because 9 comes in and Time War. I mean, it just seems like this is I wonder if they're going, like Alan, you were saying, like a really like freewheeling direction.
And I would like that. I don't think it necessarily takes away. Well, I won't talk about the trauma itself, but it would be nice to not be so weighed down in the fact that, one, they're trying to get a whole new audience with this Disney Plus thing.
Right.
And if you're going to hold on to these things from before, yes, we like to have the lore, but let's be honest, we also like to be like, oh, why does it have to be lore? As well. And so I think that there is going to be some nice things, as long as they still make some callbacks, but it's not something weighing the Doctor down, then I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally get the narrative reason that they do it. It's just weird.
I'm very excited, though, that we get the start of this Brave New Era so soon.
15 days.
It's like 2 weeks away. That's great.
16 days after the Giggle aired, 15 days from today. I think that's fantastic. And then we will get his full season, from what I'm hearing, in either March or April.
Yes.
Nice.
So
yes, I'm so glad.
We are getting the next Doctor pretty fast. The next season after that is already in production. So,
oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Series 15 or season 2, whatever they're going to call it.
Season 2.
It's going to hit in 2025.
Yes, they filmed his first 2 seasons back to back. He then gets a break to go off and do theater or whatever he wants to do. And then I'm certain that they're going to do the same thing with a 3rd and 4th season, because it sounds like he's not a 3-season Doctor, just from the rumor mill. And so they have hit this hard, and they're have burned through these episodes, and I can't wait to see what's in store. And of course, you keep in mind it's a shorter season. We're doing 8 episodes per season now, which is longer than the 6-episode Flux, but less than the 10-episode final season of Capaldi. So it's sort of in the middle. But this is also Russell made the decree when he came into the job for the second time that he was going to get Doctor Who back on an annual schedule. That to me is the most important thing,
right?
For 2 reasons. One, because I think that the very inconsistent scheduling of the last 4 or 5 years has really damaged the show more than the showrunner did. But I also think that Disney Plus is not going to go into this kind of deal with let's have 6 episodes every 2 years. They're not going to they're not going to do that. They need stuff. They need content.
Yeah.
And there are already rumors floating around about the first spin-off as well.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys heard that?
I don't know of which one.
So the rumored spin-off is, and again, this is a rumor at this point, but is allegedly going to be called, I think is it the war between land and sea, which is going to be effectively about humanity versus the Sea Devils.
Well, that would be amazing. But first of all, that doesn't work because Russell said that the first spinoff would have an 8-word title, and what you said is 7 words.
Not if it's the war between the land and the sea. Then that's 8.
War between the land
Oh
and
my
the...
goodness.
Okay, you're right.
So if it's the Sea Devils, I'm going to be sad. Although it'd probably be worse if it was the Silurians, but that's a whole nother deal. But I'm really liking the unit characters right now.
God,
and
yes,
they're so good.
Yes,
absolutely brilliant. So as long as unit is sticking around for a while, which I know is somewhat contradictory to things from a long time past, but right now they're all so good, and I want them there.
I agree.
Can we have a Yates and Benson cameo in a unit show?
Yes. Oh, we have to have
Yates.
Oh my God, we have to have.
I don't care about Yates, but know that.
But we have to have Katie too. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. Okay, I have one last thing that I have got to talk about. I guess I don't have to because I can do it on my podcast later this week. But the thing that I love this episode, the 3rd episode, I loved it. But the thing that drives me nuts about it is that RTD basically did a pastiche of all the stuff that he did in his previous things with specific examples. And like somebody in one of the comments mentioned, the hand that picks up the tooth, which is shot for shot exactly the way that it happened with Lucy Saxon picking up the ring, the Master's ring. Come on, dude. Come on. And I'll rant on this more when I record my...
I'll make a controversial opinion about that very quickly. I don't think we need to have the Master for a long time.
Me too. I'm disappointed that he's going to be coming back at some point.
I feel the same way. I'm kind of like, man, let's just put that up on. Let's hold off on that for a little bit.
So Colleen, my partner, is convinced that hand was River Song's hand, and since we're getting a Moffat written episode, that we will see River.
Oh,
I don't think it.
I personally, I love River, so I would like to see River. I don't want the Master back. Give me River Song, but not the Master, and I'm okay.
I don't need either one of them personally.
Yeah, well,
I'm
a fan, so
that's fine. That's fine.
If we see the Master, will it be John Sim?
No.
No.
Will it be Missy?
No.
Will it be Sasha?
No.
Will it be a new Master, or will it be a horrendous deepfake of Roger Delgado or Anthony Ainley?
Oh
no.
Or some blend of the two.
No.
Or bring back the Crispy Master.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes,
Crispy
that I'd
Master.
be in favor of that.
Yep.
Crispy Master.
Yep. No Master.
I do want to talk about the toy maker's teeth specifically. Did any of you notice?
Yeah,
he grinned and he had too many teeth. It's like those really uncanny valley AI images where people have too many teeth.
Also,
I knew something
looked
odd about that, but I didn't. Yeah, sorry, Riley.
Attack on Titan. Also
Yeah,
has
that too.
As well. Yeah.
I wonder if RTD's been watching Attack on Titan. That would be interesting.
Yes. It seems like it.
He doesn't seem like an anime guy to me, but you never know.
Narrative is narrative.
Okay, Alan, you've got to flash up that comment from Austin. We're going to come back to some of your comments because there have been a lot, but
we need to get to the comments.
There's a bunch.
No. Oh my gosh, that last
talk
one.
about chairs. So this is for anyone who is a long-time listener to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. Our original episode on the Celestial Toy Maker was called "I Want to Talk About Chairs," which is something that Julie said in the episode. So Austin, that's a deep cut. We love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have won the broadcast.
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
We've talked at length. Alan, I think it's probably a good time to take some of these
Oh my God,
enormous
there's
amounts of comments.
holy cow.
Yeah.
I got to scroll back and see where to start.
Yeah.
Good grief, there's so much. Okay, it's before the Loki one. I'm not going to get all of them. I just don't think we can do that.
Yeah, Alan's going to select some of your comments.
I
Anyone
just
who wants
laughed
to
so
read
hard.
through all of them, check on YouTube because most of them are on YouTube.
I flashed this up earlier, but I do want to say that Robert Lloyd was thinking of Thing with Two Heads also. He says, I don't think it's just RTD making these choices, though. I think some of these things come as requirements from the BBC brass. That's very likely.
Yeah, or possibly from Disney as well. We do know they
Yeah.
have. He's at least sending them scripts to get their feedback, even if it's not a requirement. So,
MCU should be a cautionary tale at the moment, not a blueprint.
agreed.
And Austin thinks that even Star Wars is being Marvelized. And that's why Anthony's model for good planning is Star Trek.
I mean, Star Wars, I was really enjoying The Mandalorian, and I enjoyed the book of Boba Fett until they made it The Mandalorian season 2.5.
That was the only part of it I liked.
And then season 3 of The Mandalorian didn't resonate with me. I couldn't get into Andor.
Oh, I loved Andor.
Ashoka, I was kind of digging, but I didn't love it. Star Wars, I don't know. It's not resonating with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I haven't watched any Star Trek, so, well, not any of the new stuff.
Oh, you're missing out.
Definitely Strange New Worlds. That's one that's really good.
Definitely Lower Decks.
Yeah.
All right. Robert Lloyd says, I've expressed this before. As much as I love Doctor Who, I'm skeptical there's enough international interest to sustain a multi-show platform for very long. Well, and that may change with Disney Plus.
It's really interesting because you read about Bad Wolf coming in and RTD coming back, and it's all basically read as we're going to move the production over to another studio so that the BBC can focus on making it into an international brand.
Right.
So it seems like it's their intent to try and build that.
Right.
But I mean, it'll be curious as to whether they can actually do it and whether there's a strategy there that's strong enough.
And I think it's interesting too, because choosing Ncuti with how good Sex Education is and the following that it started to get off of Netflix, that I think they're banking a little bit on him already having a following, which is not necessarily true of a lot of previous doctors.
Good point.
Right. I mean, this is not uncharted territory for the show. I mean, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood, Class. I mean, Class wasn't very successful.
Let's not talk about Class.
But I mean,
K9 and Company.
It's not like they're right. It's not like they don't know. It's not like they haven't, delved into this. So maybe they have their own lessons they've already learned on their own through their own efforts that will help them as well. So.
Absolutely. Paul Arthur says Ncuti was fantastic. His doctor came out of the gates running.
Absolutely.
And the best regeneration would be the new doctor resolving the plot.
I like that.
Adam Wright says Ncuti has brought sexy to the TARDIS. Somebody made a comment about him running around with no pants on, and I'm like, hey, at least he's got great legs.
It's a bit offensive to David Tennant. I think plenty of people thought David Tennant the first time round brought sexy to the TARDIS.
He's had his day, man. Come on. Catherine Sullivan, hello, Catherine, says, don't you think he looks tired?
I love it.
I mean, I haven't run around like the Doctor, and I feel like I look tired. So, I mean...
Kieran Evans says, a doctor free of continuity and lore would be wonderful.
Yes.
And also, In Time for My Birthday, which I guess is the first Ncuti or the next season, one or the other.
Yeah. Right.
Kieran Evans says the 3-season series rule is a bit rubbish anyway. It made sense for Troughton as they were long and tiring. Yes, exactly. I mean, during Hartnell and Troughton, they were basically 10 and a half months out of the year was how long your season was, which is insane.
I do remember reading that the new series schedule is pretty grueling. They do a lot of night shoots.
Oh, yeah.
There are weird hours, and I think both David Tennant, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi all had to have the exact same surgery from injuring themselves from all the running.
Yes.
So the new schedule is pretty tiring. So I get why some of them or most of them have said 3 seasons and I'm done.
Wow.
Even
Yes.
now.
To that point, Robert Lloyd says 3 seasons was never a rule, just advice from Troughton to Davison that most of the new series doctors happen to have followed. And that's absolutely true. There's no reason to say, there's all these accepted rules in recent years, like, will the TARDIS change with Ncuti? Because the TARDIS always changes with a new doctor. Well, that's not true.
And they're not going to build such a big, beautiful
No.
set and then be like, all right, bye. They're just
No.
going to make some tweaks like they did
Like
from...
add a jukebox.
Yeah. And,
jukebox.
you look at Matt Smith's second TARDIS interior. I mean, they made some modifications
exactly.
and made it Peter Capaldi's. They added bookshelves and changed the rambles, but it was still fundamentally the same set.
Exactly. So, no, 3 seasons is not a rule. And that's it. Austin Patterson, he's changed names. Austin Patterson says, bring in Yates and Benton's kids. Kieran Evans says, no, we don't need River. Thank you. Paul Arthur, yeah, let's rest the master. Agreed. Kieran Evans says, no deep fake masters.
I'm with you. I mean, we don't need need to tread on the graves of Roger Delgado or Anthony Ainley by doing it, but I wouldn't be surprised. All right.
Oh, we did the talk about chairs thing. Joseph Staub, hello. Joseph says, someone said that Kate Lethbridge Stewart had red fingernail polish throughout the giggle, and so did the hand that picked up.
Do you know how many women have red fingernails?
Hey,
and I'll just leave it at that.
Alan, before you move on,
yes.
Can you flash up Joseph's again? I don't know if you noticed. I know this is probably a little bit of a thing for you. You see his little avatar, his Kiss?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Which,
Creatures of the Night, my favorite Kiss album.
Yes. You've got a Kiss vinyl right behind your head. So someone's on brand here. Thank you, Joseph.
Hell yeah, thank you, Joseph. And thank you for pointing that out. I didn't notice that. Catherine says a quote from the 10th Doctor ended up being used against him.
Yeah, because Harriet Jones, Prime Minister, you look tired.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And Austin says it could be Jinx Monsoon's character. And that's what people have been saying or speculating, that it could well be that. But here's the thing. We're up on a platform, way up in the damn sky. So it's got to be somebody who can get up there and not be seen by other people as they're picking this thing up and then leave again.
And it looks like Avengers Towers, by the way.
Yeah, it does. Speaking of the Marvelization of things.
Exactly. Hey, look at that. We've gone an hour and 42 minutes.
We have.
Woo,
so
baby.
I think it's probably time we wrap this up, because I don't know about you guys. I have things I want to do today, and I'm recording
and we have another podcast to
with
record
Alan
tonight.
at 8:00 tonight.
Oh, goodness.
So to everyone who's joined us, thank you so much. We hope that you've really enjoyed the show.
Yes.
As mentioned at the beginning, this live podcast was presented by Wholanta. Alan, do you want to talk a little bit about Wholanta?
Wholanta used to be a Doctor Who convention. We are still active on our Facebook page and group. We have a very lively group that lots of people contribute to discussions, and it's a lot of fun. And who knows, it may be a convention once again.
You keep teasing that. You're going to get people excited, Alan.
I'm sorry, but if I don't keep teasing it, then eventually somebody's going to step forward and say, I have the money. I'm going to put it up and you're going to be able to do your convention again. So if anybody has that money and is willing to do that, let me know.
But as Alan kind of suggested, right now it's kind of more of an Atlanta-based Doctor Who community than a convention. But do come join us in our Facebook groups. Obviously, Alan has once again joined us, and you can find his Doctor Who podcast, Doctor Who from Auton to Zygon, at cosmicpress.com /Doctor Who Doctor-Who -A-2-Z.
Just read the screen.
And Riley, Julie, and I have been Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. You can find us at watchers4d.podbean.com. You can find all our episodes here on YouTube, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, etc., wherever you like to find your podcasts. Does anyone have any
Dave Jones says, one day Hulanta will rise from the ashes. That's my goal, buddy. Sorry.
All right. Before we say goodbye to everyone, does anyone have any final words?
Yeah. We didn't talk about this, but real quick, Rachel Talalay, excellent director. She was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
How did we not talk about Rachel Talalay?
I know. And I just wanted to say that because I enjoyed her work with the 12th Doctor so much. So I was glad that they had her come back for one of the specials. She was amazing.
I think all three directors did a phenomenal job.
Absolutely. Side story, Rachel Talalay had been pitching basically her resume to Russell T Davies way back then, and somehow it never got to him, so he never knew that she was interested in directing, and it wasn't until Moffat that she got in the door. And then Russell finds out, and he's like, how did I never know that you were interested? So his first act was to hire her for his first episode. Well done, RTD.
I want her to come back.
I love her so much.
I hope we see more of her.
Very good.
Love her. All right, that's it.
All right.
I'm just excited.
Final thoughts, Julie.
My final thought is just I'm excited. I'm excited again, and I'm really happy about it. And we got 12 days, and it's gonna be great.
My final thought is that I have never been a fan of Russell T Davies. I haven't liked really a lot of his first 4 years, except for episodes written by other people. And even some of those I didn't really like. And he does a lot of things that I don't care for, but I'm going to say that I enjoyed these 3 episodes an awful lot. So I'm very, and I've been excited about Ncuti since the moment they announced him. And I am so ready for new doctors. God, can't wait.
And I feel the same way. I feel like RTD always throws in something I don't like, and that's just part and parcel of having RTD as the showrunner. But for the most part, he does a really good job. So I'm excited to see what comes.
Yes.
So those are my final thoughts. And as we sign off, I am going to say, if you're watching this on repeat on YouTube, thank you for watching. For those of you who joined us live, thank you for joining us for this worldwide premiere.
You had that saved up since the moment that we announced that we were going to do this.
I did.
And then you were like, we're almost 2 hours and I haven't got to say my thing yet.
I meant to say it right at the beginning and forgot. So I've been saving it up for the last hour and 46 minutes.
Nice.
So, anyway, again, thank you everyone for joining us. Do check out Hulanta, check out our 2 podcasts if you're joining us and haven't checked out either of those before. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for joining us. And until next time, have a good one.
Take care, y'all.